I did not expect to save a prince with my own 2 hands. I did not expect to break protocol in front of 100 cameras, and I certainly did not expect the most advanced empire in the galaxy to owe its future heir's life to something as simple as pressing down on a chest and counting to 30. My name is Maya Chen, and I am a field medic. Not a doctor, not a scientist, just a medic, the kind who gets sent to the back of diplomatic missions because someone has to carry the first aid kit nobody thinks they will need. That day, I was standing at the edge of the Grand Hall on Station Ophelia 9, watching history happen and trying not to yawn. The hall was full of light that did not come from any bulb I recognized, curling gold ribbons of it floating near the ceiling like slow fireworks. Around me stood beings from a dozen worlds, all gathered for one purpose, to decide whether humanity would be allowed to join the wider community of the stars. At the center of it all was the Vral Dominion, an empire so old that their history books described events from before Earth had oceans. They had ships that folded space instead of crossing it. They had medicine so advanced that their people rarely got sick, and when they did, tiny machines called nanites fixed the problem before anyone even felt pain. To them, humans were something between curious and embarrassing. We still used needles. We still bled when we got hurt. We still needed doctors who touched patients with their actual hands. I was there only because human medics had insisted on attending every summit, just in case. My superiors called it an unnecessary formality. The Vral called it quaint. I called it standing very still for 6 hours while important people talked about trade routes. Then the music started. It was time for the presentation of the heir, a ceremony where Prince Kale Vralisthes, the future ruler of the Dominion, would step forward and greet the human delegation. He was young, by Vral standards, though still older than most human grandparents. His skin held a faint blue shimmer, like moonlight caught in water. He walked forward with the calm confidence of someone who had never once been told no. Halfway through his speech, he stopped. At first, I thought it was just a dramatic pause. Vral's speeches were full of them. But then his hand rose to his chest. His eyes went wide, not with emotion, but with confusion. He took one step backward, then another, and then he simply folded to the floor. The hall went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then it exploded into chaos. Guards rushed forward. Advisors shouted commands in 3 different languages. A Vral physician dropped to her knees beside the prince and pressed a small silver device to his chest. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Still nothing. Her face, usually calm and composed, twisted into something I had never seen on a Vral before. Fear. "The nanites are not responding," she said, her voice shaking. "There is no signal. His heart is not moving." I was maybe 20 feet away. 20 feet, and yet everyone acted like the distance was a mile. The Vral guards did not know what to do, because their bodies simply did not fail this way. Their medicine was built to predict problems before they happened, to repair small errors quietly and invisibly. It was never designed for a heart to just stop, suddenly, with no warning at all. But I knew exactly what a stopped heart looked like. I had trained for it more times than I could count. I did not think. I moved. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shocked gasps as a human shoved past Vral officials 3 times her size. When I reached the prince, the physician tried to block me with her arm. "Do not touch him," she said. "You do not have the technology to—" "I don't need technology," I said. "I need 30 seconds." I dropped to my knees beside him. His skin was cool, almost like touching a stone left in shade. I placed my hands on his chest, right where his heart should be, and I pressed down hard. 1, 2, 3. The physician grabbed my shoulder. "You will damage him." "He's already damaged," I snapped, not even looking up. "He's not breathing. Let me work." I do not know where that voice came from, the flat, sharp tone that made even a member of an ancient royal court freeze in place. Maybe it was training. Maybe it was fear. Maybe some part of me simply refused to let a person die in front of me while everyone else stood there arguing about protocol. I kept counting. Compressions are strange things. You are not gentle. You are not careful. You push hard enough to make ribs bend, hard enough that it feels wrong, because the alternative is so much worse. My arms burned within seconds. Sweat slid down my back despite the cool air of the hall. Around me, I could hear voices rising, some in Vral, some in other alien tongues I did not understand, all of them asking the same question in different ways. What was this human doing? I ignored them all. 28, 29, 30. I tilted his head back, the way I had done 100 times in training, but never once for real, and breathed air into his lungs. His chest rose, fell. Nothing else happened. Someone shouted that I should stop. Someone else shouted that I should let their machines try again. I heard the words primitive, and dangerous, and unauthorized, all tangled together in the noise. I kept going anyway. Compressions again. My shoulders ached, my knees hurt against the hard floor. I did not stop to think about how strange this must look. A human woman, in a plain gray uniform, kneeling over the heir to an empire, pressing on his chest like she was trying to wake him from a nap. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a memory surfaced. An instructor's voice from years ago during my very first training session. She had told us, "The body does not care how advanced your equipment is. Sometimes it just needs someone brave enough to act before they have all the answers." I had thought that was a nice thing to say at the time. I never imagined I would understand it this clearly, kneeling on an alien space station, fighting to keep a prince's heart beating with nothing but my own 2 hands. 30 more compressions. Another breath. Still nothing. The physician beside me had gone quiet, watching now instead of arguing. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on my back, human and alien alike, all waiting to see what would happen next. I did not have time to be scared. I only had time to keep pressing. One more round. My arms were shaking now, more from exhaustion than fear. I pushed down again, counting under my breath, refusing to let the numbers slow. And then, just as I reached 15, something changed. Under my hands, I felt a small flutter. Weak, uneven, but there. "Wait," I said, more to myself than anyone else. I stopped compressions and pressed 2 fingers gently against the side of his neck, feeling for a pulse the way I had been taught. There it was, faint but steady, growing stronger with each second. The prince's chest rose on its own. He gasped, a sharp, sudden sound that echoed through the silent hall like a gunshot. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then slowly finding my face hovering above him. I nearly cried right there. I did not, but it was close. The physician beside me let out a sound I can only describe as a sob of relief, quickly followed by a flurry of commands into a small device on her wrist. Within moments, actual medical support arrived. Vral technology finally catching up to a situation their own science had never prepared them for. I sat back on my heels, my hands trembling, my uniform soaked through with sweat. The hall remained silent, except for the soft beeping of alien machines and the ragged breathing of a prince who, moments earlier, had not been breathing at all. No one spoke for what felt like a very long time. Then the prince, still lying on the floor, weak but alive, turned his head toward me. "You?" he said, his voice hoarse. "What did you do?" I swallowed hard, trying to find words that made sense. I did compressions. Basic first response. It's something we learn early, back on Earth. Our bodies fail in a lot of different ways, so we learn to fix a lot of different problems, fast, without waiting for permission. He blinked slowly, processing this. "Your species trains for failure. We train for everything," I said, "because we don't always get warnings before something goes wrong." A faint, tired smile crossed his lips. Perhaps that is not primitive after all. The Vral physician who had tried to stop me earlier knelt beside us now, studying my hands like they held some kind of secret. "There was no signal," she murmured. "No prediction. No system alert. His condition should not have been possible by our understanding of Vral biology. It happens on Earth all the time," I said. "Hearts stop, sometimes for reasons we don't fully understand either. That's why we don't just rely on machines to catch everything. We learn to act with our own hands, just in case the machines miss something." She looked at me for a long moment, something like respect slowly replacing the fear in her eyes. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we have grown too comfortable trusting our own perfection." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing at all. Over the next hour, actual medical teams took over, using their advanced tools to stabilize the prince fully, repair the damage from my rough compressions, and ensure his full recovery. I stood off to the side, exhausted, unsure whether I had done something wonderful or something that would get me in serious trouble. It turned out to be the first one. By the time the summit resumed the next day, word of what happened had spread through every level of Vral society. Human medicine, once seen as crude and outdated, was suddenly the subject of intense curiosity. Officials who had barely acknowledged my presence before now asked detailed questions about human training, about how we learned to respond so quickly to problems with no warning signs. The prince himself requested to see me before I left the station. He was sitting upright now, color returned to his blue-tinted skin, looking far more like the confident figure who had greeted us the day before. "You saved my life," he said simply. "I did what I was trained to do," I replied. "Anyone with the same training would have done the same thing." He shook his head slowly. "No. Anyone with the same knowledge would know what happened to me, but you acted before you fully understood it. You did not wait for certainty. That is rare, even among my own people. I did not have a clever response for that, so I simply nodded. There is a saying in my culture," he continued, "that the strongest trees are not the ones that never bend in the storm, but the ones that learn how to bend without breaking. I think perhaps your people understand storms better than we do." I smiled at that, tired but genuinely pleased. We've had a lot of practice. Before I left the station, the Vral Dominion formally announced its support for humanity's inclusion in the wider galactic community. Officials made careful speeches about trade agreements and diplomatic value, but I knew, and I think everyone else in that hall knew too, that the real reason had little to do with politics. It had everything to do with a simple truth. Sometimes the most advanced solution is not the fanciest piece of technology, but a person willing to act quickly, imperfectly, and without hesitation, because they understand that waiting for a perfect answer can cost everything. I flew home a few days later, my part in the summit officially over. I did not expect fame or medals. I certainly did not expect an alien prince to remember my name for the rest of his very long life. But sometimes the biggest moments in history happen quietly, kneeling on a cold floor, counting to 30, refusing to give up. And sometimes, all it takes to change the future of two entire civilizations is someone brave enough to say, "I think I can fix it," and then actually try.